Alright, you guys, today what we're going to be doing is a point and line exercise. Here is a sample of it. So, in progress, it's not quite complete. So, to do this exercise, what you are going to need is you are going to need your sketchbooks, and you want to have your sketchbooks in landscape orientation. So that means left to right, horizontal, or what we call landscape. So your book should look just like this. You're also going to want to have a Sharpie marker because for our first project that we'll be doing, we will be using Sharpie pen. So we want to get as much practice using the material as we can before we get to the final project. So we've had lots of practice playing with the material and mastering it. And so when we get to our final project, it will look crisp and clean. So to do this exercise, what you're going to do is you're going to start on the left-hand side of the page on the center. And you're going to take your marker and you're going to draw a very curvy line all the way across to the right-hand side of the page. Okay, so you want that line to be nice and smooth and curved and going all the way from left to right. So this first project that we are going to be doing is all based on the element of line. And what we've drawn here is we've drawn a curved line. Now after you've done this first step, what you're going to go ahead and do is you're going to go back on the left-hand side, back underneath that line, and you're going to basically retrace it. You're going to keep this next line as close as you possibly can to the second line. You can touch, that's okay, but you want to keep it nice and smooth and controlled. You want to go nice and slowly. You don't want to rush this. So you're going to take that line and just retrace the first one, staying nice and close and tight to the first line, retracing that first curved line. Now it's not going to be just one smooth line like that first one was. You're going to have to pick up your pen and place it back down, changing the direction of your wrist, but still maintaining a smooth line. Now you might notice little dots here and there from holding the pen down too long, or when you put the pen back on the paper from lifting it up, and that's okay. You're getting used to the materials and feeling how it works out. You also might be really shaky at first, and your lines might be really wobbly, and that's okay too. We're kind of just getting warmed up right now. So you want to retrace that first line, or the second line, staying as close as possible to the second line. So there we go. Now after you do that second line, you're doing the same thing again. You're going to go underneath that line, staying nice and close and tight to that last line you drew, and retracing it. You can touch. The lines can touch, and that's okay. But you just want to make sure to stay nice and close to the first one, trying to get as smooth of a line as you possibly can, nice and controlled. Lifting up your pen when you need to and putting it back down. Like I said, it might be really shaky. The lines might be kind of rough. Take your time. Don't rush it. But hopefully, even if you're getting off to a rough start at first of this exercise, as you progress, hopefully you start to gain more control, line control. So what the purpose of this project is to fine-tune your fine motor skills. You know, when we came into this class, into Art 1, I mentioned to you that I didn't really have an expectation for where you began. You know, some of you have been taking art for years. You know, you took a couple of classes in middle school, you do it at home. But a lot of people haven't taken art since, say, like 5th grade. So we have all different skill levels in this class. So I kind of start by teaching the class from the basics. So we start by practicing drawing lots of lines. Really fine-tuning, like I said, your fine motor skills, and working on line control. Because you don't want to have, in this exercise, any really scratchy, really sketchy lines. And so you want to try to practice having nice and smooth, controlled line work, because that's going to translate to your work. If you're constantly having scratchy, sketchy, rough line work, a lot of your artwork is going to continue to be scratchy and rough and sketchy. And sometimes you just really need and want to have a clean appearance to your art and nice line control and nice craftsmanship. So that's what we're working on here, is our fine-tuning our fine motor skills. We're working on line control and practicing being able to control the material, control the tool, control our line work, so that in the end our artwork looks good. A lot of people say practice makes perfect, but practice really makes permanent. If you're constantly practicing scratchy lines, you're always going to have scratchy lines. But if you're practicing in nice, clean line work, and you do it every time, that's when you will have clean line work. So practice makes permanent, and perfect practice makes perfect. Another thing is, I'm continuing on. I'm drawing line after line. I'm following the first line I drew. I'm continuing underneath here. And what's happening is, I keep telling you, add another line, add another line. This entire page is going to be filled with these curved lines. So another thing this exercise is doing is it's building your endurance. Now, a lot of the projects that we do in the class, they might take 2, 3, 4, 6 weeks to do. So we're practicing our focus. We're practicing endurance to be able to last and focus on the same project for multiple days at a time. So line after line after line, this repetition, this focus, and being able to maintain this line control throughout the entire exercise is going to be important. Now you see how in this assignment, you see how the lines are starting to collide together and they're starting to close up right here. So how do we approach that? I want you to approach it by continuing to fill in that space. So I'm going to come in here, fill in a circle. I'm overlapping those lines nice and controlled and coming back out, going right on top of that line, filling in the circle, staying nice and close and tight together, and going right on top. Okay, and I'm going to continue to do that. So I'm going back underneath, retracing the steps, staying nice and close and tight, nice smooth line, and retracing that first shape. So I'm closing up here, so I'm going to come back out, overlap here, and hop back out. Now that one's finished, so I'm just going to kind of go back on there, overlap, bounce out, fill it in. Now your hand might be getting cramped up. That's normal, okay? So stretch out your fingers, shake out your wrists, okay? Take a break when you need to. Loosen everything up. Once you take a little break, you can go back. But what you don't want is once you get to that point where you're like kind of over it, you're like, oh my goodness, I have an entire page to fill. So you start going faster and your lines start looking more sloppy. You don't want that to happen. You start getting further away from each other. You don't want that to happen because you're going to start losing points on the quality of your work. Okay, so just stick with it. Take a break when you need to so that you can go back and continue to focus on your drawing. I'm going to go back in here, fill in this interior space, overlap my lines, staying nice and on top of each other, and then coming back out, maintaining a smooth line that's nice and close and tight to the last line I drew. Overlap on top of here, loop around, stay right on top of that line, come back out. I'm going to continue going down, but I'm also going to work on the top part. So I'm going to go on top of that first line. Stay nice and close to that first line. Okay. Pick up my pen, change direction of my wrist, stay nice and close and tight to that first one. Overlap that line, come in, overlap it again, and come back out. Still going nice and slow and controlled. Okay. Shaking out my hand when I need to. So there's some things that that are really important in this. Like I said, line control is the big objective of this. Keeping your lines nice and controlled and doing what you want it to do. So keeping them nice and smooth. You don't want them to be rough or sketchy. You want to keep them nice and close together. You can touch, that's okay. So line control is a big thing that I'm grading on here. We're working on our endurance and our focus to work on an assignment and focus on an objective for long periods of time. Okay, so you guys are going to continue working on this, filling up the page all the way on the bottom and all the way in the top and all these areas in here, retracing the lines, staying nice and close together, controlling that line work, making sure it's nice and smooth, filling in the interior spaces here, overlapping here, until the entire page is filled up with these curved lines.